Good evening. It's the 3rd of July, and this is the Black Man Who Reads Aloud. This is Joe Hall, the Black blogger, coming from Tampa, Florida, and we're in the slave narratives. Today we are reading from the words of Gabe Emanuel from Port Gibson, Mississippi. Gabe Emanuel is the blackest of Negroes. He is stooped and wobbly from his 85 years and weighs about 135 pounds. His speech is somewhat hindered by an unbelievable amount of tobacco rolled on one side of his mouth. He lives in the Negro quarters of Port Gibson. Like most ex-slaves, he has the courtesy and the gentleness of a Southern gentleman. Lord, them slavery days done been so long ago, I just remember a few things that happened then. But I sure mighty pleased to relate that what I recollect. I was a house boy on the old Judge Stamp's plantation. He lived about 9 miles east of old Port Gibson, and he was a mighty well-to-do gentleman in them days. He owned about 500 or 600 niggas. He made plenty of money out in these fields. Them niggas worked for a day keep. I declare that he sure did. Us done speak out and speak and span clean clothes some Sundays. Everybody wore homespun clothes then. Me mistress and the rest of the old ladies in the big house made the most of it. The children, women wore some kind of dress with white apron, and the men's wore overalls and homespun pants and shirts. Of course, all the time us gets hand-me-down from the folks in the big house. Us was a servant in the big house and wore the master's old dress suits. Now that was something. Most of the time they didn't fit. Maybe the pants hung a little loose and the tail of the coat hung a little long. Me being a houseboy, I used to look mighty spruce when I put on my frock tails. The mistress used to teach us the Bible on Sundays, and us always had Sunday school. Us what lived in the big house, even some of the field hands was taught to read and write by the white folks. The field hands sure had a time with that man Duncan. He was the overseer man out in the plantation. Why he'd had them poor niggas so they didn't know if the day was going in circles or what. One day I was out in the corners when he brung back an old man Joe from running away. Old Joe was always running away, and that man Duncan put his hound dogs on him and brung him back. This time I speaking about it, Master Duncan put his hand on the old Joe's shoulder and looked him in the eye, sorrowful like. Joe, he said, I sure powerful tired of hunting you. I expect I'm gonna have to get the master to sell you somewhere else. Another master gonna whip you up in the ground if he catch you run away like this. I sure sad for you if you get sold away. Us gonna miss you run around this plantation. After that, old Joe stayed close and they weren't no trouble out of him. That big white man named called Duncan, he seen the niggas behave themselves right. They called him boss man. He was always carrying a big whooping, and when them niggas got sassy, they got the whoop across their hides. Lord, I'm recalling the time when the old big hound dog, what fitting the runaway niggas done died with fits. That man Duncan, he said, us gonna holler funeral rites over that dog. He says us niggas might better be powerful and when us come to that funeral. And them niggas was sad over the death of that old poor old dog. What has chased them all over the country. They all stand around and weeping in the morning. Every now and then they put water on their eyes and play like they was weeping. Bitter tears. Poor old dog, she done died down dead and can't catch us no more. Poor old dog, amen. The Lord have mercy. The judge was a great hand for entertainment. He always had a house full of folks, and he sure give them the best of food and liquor. There was a big room he kept all polished up like glass. Every now and then he'd throw a big party and invite most everybody in Mississippi to come. They was for niggas in the quarters that could sing to beat the band, and the judge would get them to sing for his party. I remember how excited I get when one of them shindigs come off. I sure would strut then. The missus would dress me up, and I'd carry the liquor and drinks round amongst the peoples. Would you prefer this here mint julep massa? Or maybe you'd relish here this special wine of the old judges? Them white folks sure could lap up them drinks. The judge had the best of everything. There was always old fresh meat in the meat house. The pantry fairly busted with all kinds of preserves and sweetenings. Lord, I mean to tell you, them was some good days. I remember I used to hate every Saturday. That was the day I had to polish the silver. Lordy, it took me most all days. And when I think that I was about through, the missus was sure to find some of that silver that had to be did over. Then that war broke out. The master went with the soldiers, and gradually hardness come to the plantation. Us never known when the Yankees soldiers would come, spend a few weeks at the big house. They'd eat up all the master's victuals and drink up all his good liquor. I remember one time the Yankees camped right in the front yard. They took all the meat out of the curing house. Well, sir, I done beside myself that no Yankee gonna eat us all meat. So that night I slips into camp. I stole back the meat from them thieving soldiers and hit it good. Ho, 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 ho. But they never did find that meat. One time us set fire to a bridge the Yankees had to cross to get to the plantation. Them had to camp on the other side because they was too lazy to put out the fire. That's just like I figured it. When the war was over, my mammy and pappy and us 5 children traveled here to Port Gibson to live. My mammy hired out for washing. I don't know exactly what my pappy done. Lincoln would demand to set us free. I don't recollect much about him, excepting that I heard in the big house about Lincoln doing this and that and Lincoln doing that. Lordy, I sure was happy when I was a slave. Them niggas today is the same as they has always been, except they's getting more money to spend. They ain't got nobody to make them have themselves and keep them out of trouble now. I lives here in Port Gibson and does most every kind of work. I tries to live right by everybody, but I accept I won't be here much longer. I've been married 3 times. When the time comes to go, I hopes to be ready. The Lord, good Almighty, takes good care of his children if they be good and holy. And that's my reading for today. Just one story, talking about our ancestors held in slavery. our ancestors who were this particular man was living in Port Gibson when he was interviewed by the Federal Writers Project. And again, this is the black man who reads aloud. Have a great day.